This is Dead Serious, a show about short horror stories worthy of discussion. I'm Dead Ballad, and my typing changes every generation. Today we're taking a look at The Cartridge by That Crazy Chick 09. This was one of the submissions for the Creepypasta challenge. Let's get right into it. The day I got that horrible piece of art. I was with her at the swap meet. Her name was Lydia, I believe. She got in the way. We were hunting for our new collection, Pokemon. We collected everything Pokemon. Magazines, books, cartridges, you name 'em. We went into the depths of the earth to find at least one thing. The only thing we needed to complete our collection of games was the old Game Boy Edition cartridge, Pokemon Red. So there's a little bit of an error there without a typo right there. We checked the swap meet regularly to find a better deal instead of buying a $50 one from some sketchy website. Always the same routine. Come, look, nothing, leave, repeat. Just an endless spiral of nothing. Until today, Lydia and I went to the normal booths. We saw nothing and left. Right near the exit of the swap meet was a man. He had a couple of things on his table, and he was wearing a suit. A very sophisticated one, to be exact. I hadn't seen him before. In curiosity, I hesitantly approached his booth. It didn't have any price or anything. I looked around, and all I found was junk. Springs, some buttons here and there. I scanned the area, and caught my eye on a black cartridge shining in the morning light. "May I see that?" I asked, pointing to the cartridge. So at this point, the biggest question that I have about the story that I think the story should answer is what kind of swap meet this is. I think that the story is saying that this is just a general swap meet and that they are looking for Pokemon stuff at these kind of like flea market swap meet kind of deals. But we need more details on what kind of meeting this is. And perhaps a few more details on Lydia. But overall, this is a rather unique approach to how we get our cartridge instead of the been drowned approach of it being at with some old man. It's at a swap meet kind of thing. We just need to know more details about the swap meet. But let's press on. His thin lips formed a small smile and grabbed it. He placed it in front of me. His hands were as pale as his face. I grabbed the cartridge and examined the back first. It was a Game Boy cartridge painted black. I flipped to the front, and in yellow and red paint was the Pokemon logo. It seemed to be hand-drawn and horribly handled. The paint was scratched, and on the corner had a dent. I put it back on the table and looked at the man in the eye. So this is written in a somewhat clunky way, and I think a lot of the times it's really hard to discern what the problem is, whether it is the medium of writing instead of narration. Like, when I write stories, I write them in a voice that I can do, and that allows me to use poor grammar because you're not going to have excellent grammar when you're speaking. You're going to stumble around your words and try and find the right way of phrasing things that sounds natural. So this could be a matter of this is being written in the correct way for Creepypasta or Ashcan horror, whatever the fuck it is I'm calling this. Or it could be poor writing form. It really depends on how you're looking at it and what our author was thinking. I'm willing to be charitable on this because I can read the paint was scratched and on the corner had a dent. When I read that aloud, I stumble over it and then I realize how it's supposed to be said, and I can give a delivery that makes sense for that. But let's press on because we still don't know enough. "How much?" I said. 20. His voice was dull and didn't match his stature. 15? 16. We went back and forth until we made an agreement. $14.25. I handed him the scrunched up money and looked at him dead in the eye. The man smiled lightly, satisfied on his deal, like a child getting a candy for his good work. I turned back and saw Lydia. She had one hand on her hip and one holding a churro. She shoved the churro into my chest and scoffed at me. She was mad, probably because I bought the cartridge. Before I could get my thoughts together, she was already heading to the bike rack where we left our bikes and rode it to our apartments. She didn't say a word until we got back. We sat at our table. I broke the silence. Why are you mad at me? Is it because of the cartridge? Silence. Look, I'm sorry. How about you play the game first, as my gift? So I like the scene that we're setting up, where we're getting a group dynamic here between these two. I like the specificity of shoving the churro into the chest. I think that that's a nice visual. And I have to ask, though, why we would need the cartridge. Maybe our narrator here, not our author, our narrator is a stickler for playing the game legally, but you can play these games illegally, or maybe it's a mobile, no, you can get it on a phone. Maybe it's, a mobile thing, but it's clearly not a collector thing, and our narrator was told to us that they're a collector, and so that is a concern of mine. Why would they want this beaten up copy of, I'm not sure which Pokemon game it is, but it's painted black. But having a Pokemon game painted, is realistic because that's something that children would do. They would, vandalize their own games to make it personal and edgy. But, let's continue on with this scene. Look, I'm sorry, how about you play the game first? This is my gift. She sighed and looked at me. She nodded and got up. We washed the only 2 dishes we had and hurried to the couch. She grabbed our old Game Boy, and I grabbed the cartridge. I handed the cartridge, and she put it in. She turned the Game Boy on and waited. It was the old Pokemon music, but distorted and scratchy. I turned to Lydia, and her nose was scrunched up. I smiled back and kissed her cheek. I turned back and got entranced by the music. I started humming the tune off key. She cringed more. I chuckled softly and zoned out every time I looked at the screen. By the time I snapped out of it, Lydia turned off the Game Boy. I looked at the clock. It was midnight. 4 hours. I zoned out for 4 hours. I went to bed, and all I could think was that game. I got up and had cold sweat. I tried not to wake up Lydia and walked to the couch. The Game Boy was on the table, and I grabbed it. I turned it on and got entranced again. I blacked out and woke up on the couch with Lydia shaking. She had a black eye, and I got up and hugged her. What happened? I sighed. So we're getting to a dramatic part, and it's clear that we have, our narrator has some lost time here. But we need to address the grammar in this paragraph. This is the part that tells me that it's not a matter of trying to write in the style of the way that people speak. This is a matter of this was not edited enough. Now, some people just excel at editing. Weirdos who can just do it automatically. I cannot edit my own stories. I just can't. And that is partially, there are quite a few reasons, but partially why I narrate my own stories. It takes me forever to write a story to the point where I can release it and people will not pick apart the grammar on it. I have found a workflow that works for me because I avoid the lengthy task of editing my own work. I just edit it as I am narrating it. If that is not your intention, then you need to find some way to edit the work, or adapt in some other way. It's helpful to have someone like me and our community to help you edit through these things. But the first step is trying to edit it yourself. Even when I was writing my own stories and not narrating them, I would have to edit a story 5-6 times, and spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes would still slip through because I'm god-awful at it. I understand exactly what is being said in all of this, but there are mistakes here left and right, like grabbed our old Game Boy. Assuming that this is a young millennial couple, making assumptions here, but I'm assuming this is a young millennial couple. Why would they have their own Game Boy that is both of theirs. It's probably one of theirs. It's probably either our narrator or Lydia's, unless they're siblings, unless there's some sort of weird relationship going on here. And then I went to bed and all I could think was the game. All I could think about was the game. I know exactly what you're saying, but these kind of grammar mistakes really do take you out of the story. And those are the kind of things that you really need to pay attention to. Cold sweat instead of cold sweats. These sorts of things. But let's press on. What happened? I sighed. I woke up and I saw you on the couch and you were on the Game Boy again. I just had static on, and it just had static on. And when I took it, you punched me. After you punched me, you had these beady eyes and you passed out. She signed back. The Game Boy was on the floor, and I rushed to the bathroom. I washed my face and looked in the mirror. I was breathing heavily and was pale. I went back to the couch and sat next to Lydia. She put her head on my shoulder. I felt a massive amount of guilt. The day went on like any other day. Lydia went to work, and I was home alone. The Game Boy was on the table right in front of me. My hand reached for the Game Boy, and once I touched it, a spark zapped me. I pulled back and grabbed my arm. I sat back up and hesitantly grabbed the Game Boy, this time not shocking me. I turned it on again, but this time I didn't pass out when I turned it on. I saw a gore pile of Pokemon. Then I blacked out. I felt my limbs moving and resting when moving again and then resting. This went on for several hours, and I could open my eyes again. I was leaning on the sink with my blood in my mouth. The Game Boy was in the sink, playing the distorted tune. I looked in the shower, and there was Lydia. Her eyes were gouged out, and her intestines were hung on the wall with nails supporting them. My eyes watered up, and soon enough I started to cry. Whispers of the same word over and over were echoing off the walls. I sat back up and looked at the Pokemon game. I was going to chuck the device into the wall, but right when I had a glance of the screen, I blacked out. This time, I had control of my eyes. I could not feel my entire body. I stood up and walked to the body. I couldn't close my eyes. I ate her. It ate her. We ate the body. It wasn't my fault. Then I blacked out for good. And that's the end. So the gore, you have to ask yourself when you're putting gore into a story, why you're doing it, and if it serves a purpose. A lot of the times, gore is the simplest shock factor to go to, and maybe that's what you need, and maybe that's what you want. But I don't think that that's what you want here. I think you want something more specific. So, like, the visual of our narrator standing over the sink with blood in their mouth and the Game Boy in the sink playing the tune, that is the strongest thing that the story has going for it, is that image, as well as some more personable images along the way. But there's two things. A lot of the gore doesn't serve a purpose in making us feel a certain way. It's not written detailed enough to turn our stomachs, and it feels like that is the intention. It doesn't feel like it's shock value. It feels like it's supposed to be throw up value, and it's not enough to make someone like David squeamish, I don't think. As for me, it's just not serving a purpose outside of that. Also, the second thing is it feels like it's rushed. Now, this was written within a time limit and a character limit, not a character limit, a word limit. So a story can only have so much time to develop, but the relationship between our narrator and Lydia is the thrust of the story, and the more that we care about her, the more that we'll be upset at her death. And we didn't have enough time to get to know her. The bits where we do get to know her are working well. They really are. For you, I would put this down as recommended reading. The Little Wooden Box. Little Wooden Box does a nice job of building tension and developing a house atmosphere, an atmosphere of what's going on inside of a house. We need that. We need some sort of dynamic. I think that the story would be better if it was longer, and if it thought of something, and this is going to be challenging, but thought of something besides the gore to send it home. It could still be murder. It could still be loss of a loved one. In fact, I think it should be loss of a loved one. But there needs to be something other than nailing intestines to the wall, because that's a little too straightforward. But thank you, That Crazy Chick 09, for submitting to this contest, for being a author of realist horror, for contributing to this community. It means a lot that you would put your story out there and then ask for it to be critiqued. That is how you improve as an author. That's how we all do. Keep doing what you're doing, and I can't encourage you enough. But it's time to get to our sponsor for the day, which is Independent Evie. Independent Evie. It can be whatever it wants and don't need no man.